The air was heavy with sorrow as the small town of Nain bore witness to a heartbreaking procession. The rhythmic sound of weeping filled the streets, a mournful dirge that echoed through the narrow pathways. A widow walked at the center of the crowd, her face etched with unbearable grief. Her only son, her last remaining family, lay lifeless on a stretcher, carried by somber men. She had buried her husband years ago, losing the man who had been her rock, her protector, and her companion. Now, the death of her only son, her last hope, her future, left her utterly broken. Each step she took seemed to cost her more than she had to give, her tears flowing like rivers that could not be stopped. I couldn't help but feel the weight of her sorrow. What lay ahead for her now? No family to lean on, no son to care for her in her old age. She was a woman undone, her life shattered into pieces too small to mend. This was more than the loss of a beloved child. It was the shattering of her hope, her future, and her sense of belonging. Tears streamed down her face, and her trembling hands clutched at her heart as though trying to hold together the pieces of her shattered world. As the funeral procession reached the town gate, the crowd paused. A group of travelers approached, led by a man whose presence commanded both awe and peace. It was Jesus of Nazareth. He was surrounded by his disciples and a curious crowd eager to witness his teachings and miracles. When Jesus saw the widow, his face softened. He took in her tear-streaked cheeks, her shaking frame, and the lifeless body of her son. His heart was moved with deep compassion, a feeling that seemed to radiate from him like the warmth of the sun. Without hesitation, Jesus stepped forward, gently stopping the stretcher-bearers with a raised hand. The procession fell silent. The widow looked up, startled by the interruption, and her tear-filled eyes met his. He said only 2 words, but they carried the weight of heaven's love and understanding. "Don't cry." It wasn't a command but a promise. It was as if he was saying, "Your sorrow is not the end. What feels final is not final to me." The crowd held their breath as Jesus approached the stretcher. His words were simple, yet their authority was undeniable. "Young man, I say to you, get up." For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The grieving mother stared at her son, unable to comprehend what was happening. Then, before her eyes, the impossible unfolded. The young man's chest rose as he drew a breath. His fingers twitched, his eyes fluttered open, and he sat up, alive and well. A collective gasp swept through the crowd, followed by an eruption of cries. This time, cries of astonished joy and praise. Jesus smiled as he helped the young man off the stretcher and into his mother's arms. The widow clung to her son, her tears now flowing with gratitude and relief. Where there had been only despair, now there was hope. The people surrounding them marveled, some falling to their knees in awe. "A great prophet has appeared among us," they said, and others proclaimed, "God has come to help his people." This miracle is more than a story of resurrection. It's a testament to the compassionate heart of Jesus, who understands our pain and steps into our darkest moments. For the widow of Nain, death had seemed to have the final word, but Jesus showed that with him, death is not the end. It is a transition into new life. He has the authority to bring restoration where all hope seems lost. He also showed us that, with him, it is never over until he says it is over. Today, we may face different forms of death, be it the loss of loved ones, the collapse of a dream, a failing business, or the crushing weight of sickness or failure. But the same Jesus who restored the widow's son in Nain is ready to step into your situation. His words, "Don't cry," remind us that he sees, he cares, and he acts. As Jeremiah 29 verse 11 assures us, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. It is not over until Jesus says it's over. Whatever feels lifeless in your life today, trust Him to bring it back to life. Call on Him, and watch Him turn your mourning into joy, just as He did for the widow of Nain. If Jesus could turn a funeral into a celebration of life, imagine what He can do for the situations we call hopeless. When He steps in and says, "Don't cry," it's not just a comfort, it's a promise that He has the final say. And with Him, the story is never truly over.